Hello there guys. Today I've got a quick review of a new product from Plastic Invasion. You might remember about a year ago I looked at their Scale Modelling World War II German Camouflage Uniforms book, which as the name suggests teaches you how to paint various German camouflage uniform patterns. Today's book follows a similar theme, which is German field grey uniforms. It's a new release this year and it follows a similar style to the previous book, which has some really nice high quality photos in it. So let's take a look at this one. It's 110 pages, 21.9 euros. It's available online from the Plastic Invasion website. Like their previous book, this one combines historical images and reference information with photos of reenactors, photos of equipment, and images of models in progress. This particular book tends to focus on the painting of two figures, both of which are available from Plastic Invasion separately. The first is this 1/35th scale figure, and the second is this 1/12th scale bust. But of course the techniques in the book will apply to any figure that you want to paint in a field grey uniform. I also notice on their website they have a Scale It number 2, which is out now and covers German field repair workshops, and a 2025 Kickstarter campaign for an Easy Company in Normandy modelling book, which should be interesting. Anyway, back to this Scale It number 1. As we can see from the contents page, this book places itself in the era of summer 1944 during the Soviet offensive operation, which roughly coincided with Operation Overlord on the Western Front. And the character here, Otto Degen, who is referenced, I believe refers to one of the main characters in the TV series Dusty Faces. We start with a bit of historical background here, which makes for interesting reading. I didn't realise that the Soviets had 150,000 partisans working on their side there, disrupting German transport and railway networks and so on. We've also got some fantastic historical images here, which is always really good to see in books like this. Then we move on to Otto Degen and some background information with some photos of reenactors to set the scene. I know that some people don't like reenactors as reference material, and of course you do have to be careful with all references, but personally I think that these really do help provide some visual context, and the images here, the photos here, are really high quality too. After this we move on to the equipment with images of each piece and detailed descriptions. Personally I find these really useful, particularly for things like the variations that might occur throughout the war. So for example, here on the helmet page it tells us that the helmet has a 0.5 centimeter rolled edge, but this was omitted later in the war, presumably to save on materials. And in terms of the boots, there's lots of detail, but one thing I didn't know is that the height of the boot, the shin part, was reduced by up to 6 centimeters later on in the war, again to reduce materials. Now 6 centimeters is less than 2 millimeters in 1/35th scale, but it does go to show the amount of detail that has gone into researching this book. After the equipment we move on to the bulk of the book, which is the painting of the figures, starting with the uniforms. We've got a guide broken down into many smaller steps showing how the colour modulation process takes place. The guide uses Vallejo paints, although of course the techniques would apply to any other brand of paint as well. And it uses a variation on pre-shading and modulation, where the base coat is a darkened version of the field grey, followed by a mid-coat which is field grey itself, and then a highlight layer which features a lightened version of the field grey. Each step shows the paints that are used, and there are some useful tips such as using skin tone to lighten colours rather than white. We also get a section with 12 steps no less for painting the face, something which I've always found difficult, and it's really helpful to break it down into this number of steps for me rather than just having a sort of magic step in the middle where we have this final face coming out. We've got 9 steps that cover the painting of the helmet, including the insignia details, which I don't see covered very often. I'm not going to show every page, but we have some similar tutorials for the trousers and then for the equipment. The equipment is something that I sometimes find myself neglecting, painting things like the canteen in just a single colour for the body and a single colour for the cap. But this tutorial shows how to add more detail, how to add some shading and some wear effects and so on. All of this takes us to around page 70 in the book, with the remaining section covering the 1/12 scale bust. I won't show much of this section because the layout is very similar, but I did really like the part on painting the leather and getting that worn edge effect there. It's got really good tips on the colours to use and adding the extra detail, which of course in 1/12 scale is really important. So there we go guys, that was my look at the Scale It #1 book by Plastic Invasion, available from their website, and I'll put a link in the description below. Like their previous book, it seems to be a really solid guide for people who struggle with painting figures, as many people do, myself included, so definitely one of the better references if you're in the market for one. I'm also going to keep an eye on their website for their future publications. I would like to say thank you to Plastic Invasion for supplying this book for free, and thank you to all of you for watching, with special thanks to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and until next time, have fun modelling.